Hi everyone, my name is Ercy and welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will be giving you my thoughts on The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. That is book 2 of the Dark Tower series. If that's something you want to see, then stick around. So why did I pick up this book? So I'm gonna let you guys in on a little secret. I'm a little bit of a completionist. When it comes to books, for the most part, if I start a series, I'm gonna finish the series. I have to absolutely hate or despise a book to not keep going in the series. Which is weird because I wasn't the biggest fan of The Gunslinger, the first book of the Dark Tower series, but I was still interested in learning more and seeing why everyone really enjoyed this book. And I feel like for the most part, the consensus on The Gunslinger is that if you read it first, you're probably not going to like it until you read the rest of the series and then go back and read The Gunslinger. Because I feel like people who have read The Gunslinger after reading the whole series love The Gunslinger. So I'm really curious to see how that's going to flip for me, if it does. But even Stephen King, like in the introduction of The Gunslinger, was like, this is not the best book. But I still appreciated the setup that he had in The Gunslinger, which is what made me want to continue on with The Drawing of the Three. Let's do a little recap on the genre of this book. So this is a dark horror fantasy, and that just means that this is a fantasy book with elements of horror in it. And that is something I believe is very much the case with this book. This book is also classified as a Western, and Westerns primarily deal with cowboys, outlaws, settlers, and their attempts to tame the Wild West or the frontier. And in this case specifically, we have a gunslinger, so a sort of cowboy figure, and he's exploring different frontiers, whether it be in the city, so the city area would sort of be his personal frontier, and the world that he is in, or the world that he's from. I also saw this book being classified as a science fiction book, which I get. Like, I definitely see that, and it's mainly because of the use of portals and interdimensional travel. So I definitely see this leaning towards science fiction as well, but it's definitely still considered a fantasy book. So I just love when books can transcend genres and pull things from different places to make a work of art, really. But what is the book about? So like I said earlier, it is the sequel to The Gunslinger, and it is the second book of the Dark Tower series. And in this book, we pick up with Roland and his quest to the Dark Tower. In this book specifically, we wind up meeting Eddie and Odetta Holmes. Roland finds these doorways that connects him to contemporary America. And I'm using the quotes, because this book was published in 1987. So contemporary for this book is the late 80s. So not so much now. But it primarily deals with Roland's encounters with these two individuals and their role in helping Roland get to the Dark Tower. And I'm also going to say helping. So what did I like about this book? For one thing, it's not The Gunslinger. This book was definitely a step up from The Gunslinger. It's a step up in terms of the writing style, the readability of it. We have more action in this one. And while I still don't feel like I really know why he's compelled to go to the Dark Tower, the mysteries are starting to reveal themselves within this book. I was definitely hooked on the scenes with Eddie and his world. How he and Roland were able to come together to sort of deal with Eddie's problems. And those scenes in Eddie's world were definitely real nitty gritty, dark. We're dealing with drug dealers and gangsters. And I definitely felt like I was watching like a classic 80s show where everything's real dark and there's people with like knives like coming out of the woodworks. It was definitely like dark and dirty, and it was real different in terms of a fantasy for me. I also like that there were multiple settings in this book. It's very different from other quest type fantasies where we're sort of like on a linear path, like traveling like traveling from one place to the next. Like we're jumping from different timelines, different settings, all like in the same chapter. Like it's really interesting. And every time that we go to a different place, we're sort of revealing the horrors of each of those places. And I thought that was really cool, and it kept me on my toes while reading this book. I also really love the scenes with Detta and Odetta Holmes. The inner turmoil and the battle of the minds. I won't say much because I want you guys to read it and go through it the way that I did as like a surprise. But I just really love those scenes. I thought they were really, really cool. And I loved how everything connected in the end. It gave me that feeling of like, yes, that's it. This is what I want. This is that feeling of like completion. And it was definitely very satisfying for sure. But let's move on to my dislikes. So I know this book was published in the late 80s. And I know the way that we speak has evolved. And what has been sort of culturally acceptable to say or trendy back then is definitely not the case now. But the slurs and the slang, like, I hated it. It doesn't allow for the story to age well. You have the N-word being thrown around casually, like, a lot. Women referred as bitches, Hispanics as spics, members of the LGBTQ plus community referred to as the F word, right? I won't even say it because it's a horrible word. There was just so much of it that every time it like pulled me out of the story and made me cringe. But like, I get it because like I said, this was written back in the 80s. It was more trendy or culturally appropriate, right? I wouldn't even say culturally appropriate. If anything, people were more lenient about the use of those words back then, as opposed to in today's modern world, right? It was just like a lot, and it pulled me out of the story a little bit. But it's not as if I was pulled out to the point where I wanted to put the book down. It was just in those moments, I would just be like, I don't like that word, but whatever, you know? Like, I'm going to keep going with it, but it was just a little annoying to read through over and over again. I also didn't understand this instant attraction that Eddie felt towards Odetta. He had like 1 or 2 conversations with her and he's like, I'm gonna marry her. I love her. I just felt like it was a little forced and I didn't quite understand it, but it definitely affected the way that Eddie behaved towards Odetta and Detta. So like, I get it, but it was a little too fast for me. Let's move on to my ratings. So despite all my negative feelings about the book, I'm still giving this one 4 stars. I am still invested. I am still curious. I want to know what's happening next. The ending of this book was dope. I really, really liked the ending of this. I felt like the interconnectedness of it all. I felt like the way that everything connected in the end was really great, and I really liked that. Like, there were moments where the book dragged a little bit, like when they're walking along the beach, but King used those moments to really dive deep into the minds of these characters, and you really got to know them on a deep level, and I really appreciated those moments. So while this is sort of a quest story, this is definitely a character-driven story. I really enjoyed learning about these characters and understanding why, or understanding their motivations, or why they act the way that they do, or even just how they see the world. It was really interesting with this book. But who do I recommend this book for? So being that this is the second book to the series of The Dark Tower, I would definitely recommend this to people who have read The Gunslinger and who want to continue on with the series. But all jokes aside, it is definitely for those who like gritty, dark, dirty fantasy books. If you like a lot of mystery in your stories, this is for you. I would recommend this book for those who are flexible with their preferences and settings, being that we jump around a lot. We have a lot of movement and travel between 2 vastly different worlds, and we spend a lot of time in both of them. So I can't truly say this is an urban fantasy or a Western fantasy because it's kind of both. I also recommend this book to people who enjoy character-driven stories because we spend a lot of time in the heads of these characters. I haven't read much of Stephen King, but I believe that's sort of what he's known for, is really making you understand these characters and really getting into their heads. And this is just a perfect example of that. So while the plot moves really slowly, I'm getting to know these characters on a deep level. And with that, those are my thoughts on Stephen King's The Drawing of the Three, Book 2 of the Dark Tower series. If you have read this book, please tell me what you think. I think my 4-star rating kind of shows how I feel about this book, along with the rest of my thoughts in this video. But let me know what you think of this book. If you plan on reading this series, also let me know in the comments of this video. I'd be really curious to know what you guys think of this book. But yeah, if you enjoyed this video, give this video a like and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more. I hope you guys have an amazing day, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.